I've tested both the SpotOn and Halo 4 collars so that you don't have to make a potentially expensive mistake. Rather than making some 20-minute long video where I just dump a bunch of specs on you, which I know I've probably done in the past, I'm going to flip the format a little bit. We're going to ask some questions and figure out which of these collars is actually going to best fit your life and your dog. Now, we'll look at the pros and the cons of the SpotOn and the Halo 4. First question, what's your yard situation look like? Because frankly, if you have a balcony and a dream, that technically does not count as a mid-sized yard. If your property's on the larger side, over half an acre, and maybe it's got some hills or a bunch of trees, maybe some dense forest, but you want to keep it within your boundary and you need something custom, that is where a GPS dog collar like Halo 4 or SpotOn comes into play. So let's dive in a little deeper and see which one of these actually earns its price tag. Next question, what's your dog situation? If you've got a smaller dog, maybe under 15 pounds or the kind that can fit inside of a purse, SpotOn will likely not be for you. The collar is much too bulky for a dog of that size, and it requires a minimum circumference of 10 inches around the neck. Now, Halo 4, on the other hand, has a lower weight requirement, just 10 pounds, and an 8-inch neck requirement. Now, that doesn't sound like it's that big of a difference, but it can open it up as an opportunity for much smaller dogs, specifically when it comes to GPS dog collars. But here's the kicker. These kinds of collars are made for dogs that are exploring large areas of terrain. For medium to large size dogs, 15 pounds and up, you are in the clear. Either of these collars will work for your dog, but we also need to think about neck size. Like we said earlier, the SpotOn collar requires a minimum of 10 inches and it goes up to 26 inches in circumference. Halo, with its extenders, can go from 8 inches to 30.5 inches. So if your dog is rocking a thick neck, Halo with its extenders might be the solution for you. Here's where people mess up. Training. These collars are not just a set and forget situation. It doesn't create some sort of Star Trek style force field that's going to beam your dog back to the center when they reach the boundary. You actually have to teach them what the signals mean. And that's where a lot of people fail. A lot of the negative reviews that you will find of these collars are from people who don't actually take the steps to train their dog with the collar. And frankly, that is an essential part of making these collars work. Halo walks you through the training process using Cesar Millan's methods, which are built into the app. This is especially useful if you haven't trained a dog with this kind of collar before, or if your dog happens to have a bit of a stubborn streak. SpotOn offers some solid resources as well, but its approach is a little bit more hands-off and DIY. Both give you the option as to how the collar is going to respond, whether that's sound, vibration, or light static, so you can adjust based on what actually works for your dog. Let's talk about the prices, and this is where things get a little frustrating or stressful, just depending on how much money you want to spend. I'm about to throw some pretty large numbers out at you, but remember you can subtract from these large numbers by using the discount links in the description below. So, Halo 4 starts around $549, which is more reasonable than SpotOn, at least up front. The thing you have to remember with Halo 4 is that it requires a monthly subscription in order for the collar to work. I'm going to repeat that again because I think people tend to forget. To use the basic features of the collar, you have to have an active subscription, and that costs around $10 a month for a basic subscription. So when you add things up, your first year costs around $650, and after that you just kind of keep with the monthly payments. It's like a gym membership, but it's for your dog and they're getting fit, unless you also run around the yard with your dog, in which case, can also technically be kind of like your gym membership. But then I guess you could also just kind of call the dog back if you're running with them and then they start to run away. Who needs the collar at that point? If you would rather pay up front and skip adding another subscription to your life, SpotOn is going to be more your speed. The collar itself costs right around $1,000. Not ideal. I totally get that. However, when you buy the collar, you can use all of the basic functions of the collar without any additional subscription. So you're eating that whole cost up front. Now, I should note they do offer an additional subscription, but it's entirely optional and just gives you things like real-time tracking and notifications when your dog leaves the boundary. So if you do want that, it is an option for an add-on. But again, if you just need to create a boundary and make it work with your dog, you buy that collar up front and you're covered. When you compare the costs of each of these collars over a few years of use, they actually end up being essentially comparable. And hey, no matter which one you go with, you're still probably saving money over installing a typical traditional fence. Those can run you up to 5 figures easy, especially if your yard happens to be larger than your average postage stamp. Last question. Do you plan to go to any tough environments, or do you want to take this thing traveling? If your dog's mostly hanging out in their own backyard or a few backyards with some clear views of the sky, either of these collars are going to be a solid pick. Both of their GPS systems are accurate enough to keep your dog safe in a basic environment. Now, Halo 4 is especially solid if you plan on traveling. It is very portable. You can program up to 20 different boundaries in the app, which makes it super easy to jump between your house, your parents' house, a dog park, a vacation spot, an Airbnb, wherever, without any hiccups. The app is super intuitive and built for you to easily make fences by either walking around a boundary or just tapping it in on the map. Now, just remember, if you're going to be around dense forests or tough terrain, maybe tall concrete buildings, Halo's GPS system is going to suffer a little bit more in those cases. I personally saw a little bit of boundary shift when I set up a boundary near a forest, but some of my other testers did not experience those issues, so it's entirely possible that you're going to be just fine. Now, if you mainly stay in a few locations and you want a simple app-driven setup with solid training resources, Halo is going to be a great fit for you. But if you plan on heading into some tougher terrain, or you want something that's going to work off-grid, SpotOn needs to be your pick. SpotOn uses a dual-feed GPS antenna, which means it is pulling GPS data from multiple sources at the same time. That makes it the most accurate in places like dense woods, around tall buildings, or typically anywhere else that your usual GPS might go on the fritz. SpotOn held a firm boundary in my forest testing, and especially even in some places where Halo kind of went on the fritz. And once you program a boundary into a SpotOn GPS collar, it will work without any cellular service. No data, no Wi-Fi required. If you want real-time tracking and alerts, you will need SpotOn's additional subscription and some self-service, but the fence boundary itself, no service required. And also, I should mention, I personally like the build quality of the SpotOn collar just a little bit better. It just feels a bit more rugged. I like that it's smoother rather than textured, so it's easier to clean, and it just feels built like something that I would trust taking outdoors. All right, based on everything we talked about, here's the quick breakdown. SpotOn is your pick if you have a large or difficult property, you want pinpoint accuracy in the toughest terrain, and if you prefer paying more upfront rather than adding a subscription into your life. It's also the only collar that's going to work completely off-grid, which makes it your main pick if you don't want to rely on cell service. Halo 4 makes more sense to you if you are looking for a lower upfront cost, you have a smaller dog, you want something with some solid built-in training, and you basically are using it in multiple areas with good GPS visibility. It's smaller, it's more portable, and it's easier to manage in the day-to-day. You just have to remember that you're going to have that extra subscription fee when you use it. At the end of the day, there's really no simple answer here. Both of these collars cost more upfront than my first car, but they will actually work if you take the time to train your dog to follow the signs that it gives them. They're a whole lot cheaper than a traditional fence. So whether you go with the higher upfront cost of the SpotOn or you go with the subscription model of the Halo, both can help let your dog roam safely while saving you from the heart attacks of realizing, oh shoot, I left the gate open again. Now, check the discount links in the description below, because when we're talking about these high kinds of dollar counts, really every dollar counts when you're talking about spending this much on your dog. That's all we have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.